To be clear, I blame Larry NASSAR, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
If they're not going to protect me, I want to know, who are they trying to protect? It disgusts me that we are still fighting for the most basic answers and accountability over 6 years later.
This searing testimony from U.S. gymnasts pushing for accountability after failures at the FBI, USA Gymnastics, and U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee enabled years of sexual abuse by Larry NASSAR. So where does the investigation go from here? Joining us for their analysis are Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas and USA Today sports columnist Christine Brennan. Good morning to you both. Christine, you have covered this extensively from the beginning, but to have these young women, these elite athletes before Congress telling this story, how they were ignored by the FBI was infuriating.
They are American heroes. They will always be American heroes. And their story is so important, even though much of this has been known. We've been talking about this, hearing from them, and hearing about the absolute failure of the adults to help these young athletes, who all, by the way, young women, but also winning Olympic gold medals for the United States, the nation cheering for them. We've been talking about this since 2015 or 2016, and full-blown 2017-18. And I think many people remember the victim impact statements in January of 2018 in that Lansing courtroom, Martha. And here we are again. The reminder is essential. As I said, they are national treasures. Thank goodness for them. But the suffering for them when they tell the story over and over again, how many more times do we have to hear this story before people listen and the adults realize what they have to do to protect kids?
But what we heard about so much was the colossal failure of the FBI, Pierre.
Martha, this is perhaps the most confounding, baffling, shocking case of individual failure by the FBI that I can recall covering. Those women are heroes. What they did was public service. It's one thing to have a 100-page plus report by the Inspector General laying out what the FBI did or didn't do. It's another thing to hear from the women. And let me be clear about what happened here. The FBI received allegations that these women were being molested. They dragged their feet for weeks, interviewed only one of the 3 women that they got the information about, then proceeded not to open a formal investigation, not to even document the case, and most importantly, they did not contact any of the authorities in the locations where Mr. NASSAR was working, meaning that 70 more women at least were attacked and molested.
So, Christine, where does this go from here? I know they've called for an independent investigation, but what happens now?
There have been investigations, maybe more. I think that would be warranted. I wonder if we shouldn't be looking at these women, Allie Raceman, Simone Biles, Michaela Maroney, Maggie Nichols, and so many others, as people that we can look to as a nation, not just sports. Is it time for ombuds people? If they are up to it, and that's the key question, because it's so difficult for them to tell the story, and the strain on them, they're spent after they talk. But can we use them? There is safe sport. They are catching some of the bad guys now. That has changed. Coaches are mandatory reporters in a way they weren't before. There have been some positive changes, but more needs to be done. And I think these women are the key, if they want to be, to a successful national push to try to deal with this, not just in sports, Martha, and the Olympics, but throughout American society.
And Pierre, what happens now at the FBI? I mean, one agent was fired, but who's held accountable? We had Chris Wray apologizing, but what happens next?
Well, there's a lot of pressure to examine the actions of the agent that is accused of falsifying a document, to investigate further, or to do more, prosecute the agent who is accused of lying to the Inspector General, agents who were investigating the case. But the main thing that we saw from the FBI is to say, this cannot happen ever again. The scale of this kind of problem is mammoth. The FBI in the last 5 years has investigated over 18,000 cases of sexual predation, abuse, and exploitation. So they knew they had to say to the world, we will trust the word of victims.
So Christine, what about the committees? What about the U.S. Olympic Committee? What does accountability look like beyond this hearing?
There has been some change. The men at the top of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee are gone, replaced actually by women who are now running the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Safe sport does exist, and even though there's a lot of controversy about safe sport, I've covered a lot of those stories, dealt with figure skating, sexual abuse. They are getting people, bad people, coaches out of the sport. They are doing that. That is happening. I think with safe sport, if we really care as a nation about this, Pierre and Martha, and the nation cared, it was wall-to-wall coverage and front page of the newspaper, right? If we really care, then is it time to fund safe sport or another organization with millions and millions more dollars for hundreds more investigators? These are the kind of questions I think this nation has to answer if we don't want to continue to see the stories we saw this week.
And we don't want to see those stories anymore. Thanks, both of you, for joining us this morning.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.